Okay, let's start with creating a new model space. I will go into the part design workbench and I'm going to rename this to, let's say, sketch part 2, and I'm going to create a sketch. I'm going to pick the XY plane. I can pick it here, I can pick it here, either is fine. And now you are in the sketch. Okay, now in the sketch environment, you will see geometry creation tool set. This is the geometry creation tool set. You have points, you have lines, arcs, circles, rectangles. You can create all sorts of geometry using these tools. We will get into more details on that. And then these are the constraint tool set, and we'll describe more into that, and we'll get into more into that as well. Now, these two buttons are also important. This one is the grid space on and off. So if I switch it off, you will the grid will disappear. If I switch it on, the grid will appear. So you can also change the grid size by going into preferences, and in the sketcher environment, you go to grid, and by changing this grid size, you can change the grid spacing. Now, I'm not going to use it, but if you go and decide to change the grid spacing, uh, do it before you starting a sketch. Okay, so I'm not going to do it right now, but you can do that. Now, then this button is to toggle the geometry to the grid. Now, let's say I have it switch off. I think I have it switched off. So let's see if I draw something. It is not locking into these points. So I'm going to draw a line like this. It's not locked into any of these grid points. Now, if I switch it on and let's say I draw a line, it is going to lock into a point, and it's going to lock into any grid points. Okay, so that's the advantage of having it activated. Okay, so that's the difference between having the grid snap on or off. Let's concentrate on these menus on this left hand side. So you have the solver message, and it says under constraint 8 degrees of freedoms, and I think that's correct because we haven't applied any constraint, so it's under constraint, and you don't see any constraints here because we haven't applied any of them right now. And then you can see two lines, and you can filter them out if you want, and you can make it disappear or appear. Now I can click them, and if I shift and press the second one, everything will be picked, and then I can right click it and delete it if I need to. So that's one way of deleting it. And also I can do by left click and drag a box, and that will delete these lines as well. So you can do that. So let me press the delete key, and it will delete those lines. Now, next thing I want to focus is on what is this, actually this one, what is this auto constraint on and off? Okay. Now, if I say I don't want any auto constraining, I just click this and it will show up as no auto constraint. So let's start with without any auto constraining. Okay. Now I want to draw a line. Yeah, I just draw a line in space. Now, if we try the same thing with the auto constraining on, what will happen? It will apply a constraint. I draw it like more like a horizontal. So it applied a constraint already. So that's what it says. It's applied a constraint that the line needs to be horizontal. It done automatically, and then you have this constraint appear in this constraint box. Okay, so that's the difference between auto constraining on and off, right? I would initially I would say you could start with auto constraining because that will be easier for you. And if and when you get into more advanced stage, you can switch it off. It depends on how you want to proceed with your sketch. Okay. Now I'm going to delete all these lines this time. Okay. Next thing I want to do is demonstrate is what why do we need constraining. So let me draw something here, and let's try. Okay, it applied a constraint. Go to draw something like a trapezoidal. Now I'm going to apply a dimension to this. Okay, let's say 50 millimeters. So it looks okay. So this is uh, says it's under constraint. Yes, it is obviously under constraint. Let's say I want to, let's say I want to maintain the same shape, but I want to make this bigger. So what I'm going to do is, if you want to, get out of this constraint creation mode, you es- escape by pressing escape button. Now you double click and you will have a dialog box appearing where you can change the dimension. So I'm going to change it to 60. Okay. So what happened is, yeah, it changed it, but it also changed the angles. Okay. So geometry, the intention was for me to just change one dimension and keep everything the same, but that did not work. Okay, that did not work. So what it says is because the model is under constraint, you are not able to maintain your shape as you want. It going to vary arbitrarily, and that's why you want to apply constraints so that to prevent that and you maintain your model consistently the shape you want, and then you can vary your dimension as you iterate on your design. So that's the key concept of having constraints in your model. And typically we want to have it fully constrained. So I'll demonstrate what fully constrained model means in the next step. So let's delete this guy. Okay, so let's start with the rectangle this time. Going to have this rectangle drawn. So you can see already it applied certain set of constraints. These were the horizontal constraint. This line is to maintain horizontal. This line, it maintains vertical, this maintains vertical, and this maintains horizontal. So it already has applied certain set of constraints because you have used this rectangle creation tool. Okay. Now I'm going to escape out, but you can see that it can vary. These dimensions can vary. This dimension can vary, and that the whole thing can move up and down. So that means this is not constrained, but you can see here it has 4 degrees of freedom constrained, but it says it is under constraint. Okay, so how do we fix that? So I'm going to go and put some dimensions. So this is a dimensional constraint. I'm going to put a dimensional constraint here. I'm going to say 50. Now it's set to 50. And this guy, I'm going to say 40. Now it's 40. And I'm going to escape out. Now let's see what happens. So I cannot change the dimension, the height or the width. I cannot change it, but I can move around. So it is still not fully constrained. You can see that it says under constraint by 2 degrees of freedom. So how do we fix that? We can fix it by, putting a constraint here and limiting its movement. So let's say I'm going to put it 15. Now, if I escape out, it can move only vertically. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to put actually a vertical constraint. Now I'm just going to say 10. Now it is fully constrained, and you can see that it says fully constrained, or you can see all the constraints. So there are so many constraints, okay? And I have 4 lines. So that's how you fully constrain it. When you fully constrain it, everything turns to green. Okay, let's look at this constraint box and understand what's going on here. Okay, so it seems like it has a lot of constraint applied, even though we did not apply all of them. So when we draw the rectangle, it automatically put some constraints. And then the first one they put in was this coincident constraint, which is this one. So because it is, 2 lines coming together, it needs to be coincident in order to have a continuous geometry. So that's why they put 4 coincident constraints along the vertices of the rectangle. Okay, and then it also applied these horizontal and vertical constraints. And then we have these the size constraints that I applied. Those These are 2 size constraints that control the size of the rectangle, and then this is the positioning constraint we applied here so that the whole thing does not move. So there are like how many 12 constraints for this simple rectangle. So in order to fully constrain it, okay. Now, let's say if I go and delete a couple of them, now you can see it is saying under constraint, there are 2 missing. So that's why when we did not put those, when we delete those 2, it says 2 degrees of freedom is under constraint. So since we have this auto constraining on, you will see this message coming up saying, hey, this model is under constraint, and you need to put more constraints to put this or make it fully constrained. So let's go back and put those, so that will make it once again fully constrained. Okay. Now there are a couple of things since you have so many constraints in this box. When you start going and building models that are complex, using the sketcher, you draw complex geometries. You have this box will get filled pretty soon. You'll have hundreds and hundreds of them. Okay. Now, how do we now we want to identify some constraints or associated with geometry. Okay. Okay. Let me go back to the sketch here. How do we do that? So one thing you can do this, this select associated constraint tab, and it will show you that this line has few constraints associated with that too. Coincident constraint, top and bottom here, and then you have a vertical constraint. And let's see that. Okay, that's pretty much it for this line. Okay, so you can use this tab or the box or the button here to identify that. And then also vice versa, you can click on the geometry here and see what lines are associated with that. Like for instance, let's say I can click on this and then click on it, and it will show you this constraint and the associated geometry of that constraint. So it's kind of a reverse. Okay. So that's kind of a advantage when you have a very large number of constraints in the box and you want to quickly pick which one is which which one is associated with geometry. Okay, so having said that, let's go to a few more things on the constraint side. Let's see if let's say if I draw another box. Now, this when you ever draw a rectangle, it comes with certain preconditioned constraint applied, which I think let's say I don't want that. I can delete that by pressing delete button. Now I remove that constraint that make this line horizontal, and I can move around. Okay, I can move around. I can apply an angle here, and then I can show you that, hey, okay, maybe let's apply an angle between the two. And now you can constrain it further. It's not fully constrained because you have to apply some geometric size constraints. But you get the point, right? So you can start with predefined geometry and change it around, and you can use this box to help you guide with which constraint to remove. So that's convenient. Um, Let me go back here. So let's I'm going to delete that guy. So as we are getting into more into the geometry and constraints, now going back to this geometry tab, you have let's say you know you got some elements that where you can create geometry. You can create a point, line, arc, circle, rectangle. So those are kind of a simple geometric creation uh, elements. Then you got some, this is the ellipse. You can create ellipses. You can create B-splines. You can also create a polygon. And also you could do, various, maybe hexagon or octagon. You can create triangle. So it's basically these are essentially um, geometry that is already built with these basic elements. Okay. Now let's say I can create a slot. Now you can see that comes with certain preconditioned constraints as well. Okay. Now let's dive into a little bit more onto the constraint side now. So we talked about this coincident constraint. We have arc, not the arcs. This one is basically point on an object. And you have the vertical, horizontal, you have parallel. So you can parallel, you can say, okay, I draw some couple of lines here. I want to make them parallel. What I can do is I can pick this, they become parallel. Now, since I did not apply a constraint on one of these lines, they arbitrarily change. That's what happens if you have a under constraint. But if you have a one constraint and then the other one will get uh, you can create a parallel line with respect to the one that is constrained. Okay. So that's parallel, perpendicular. You can do the same thing. Let's say I have this line. I click on here. Now this is not parallel. I go and click on the parallel constraint and make them parallel. Okay. Now in this case, it is already assumed this box or the rectangle is already assumed it is perpendicular. So you are not going to apply a perpendicular constraint here because it's already connecting two vertical and horizontal lines. Okay. So as we keep moving on, then you got tangent. Okay, that's interesting. Let's try a tangent constraint. I want to create a line and arc. I just arbitrarily create one. Let's say, okay, I did not create it correctly. Want to start with this point, let's see. Okay, now it's not tangent. What we can do is we can put this tangent constraint between, oh, this works. Yes, so it worked, but it also gave me a warning, endpoint to endpoint tangency was applied, coincident constraint was deleted. So it is basically the tangency is built in, have a built-in coincident constraint. So that's why it is already deleted, but that you get the point, right? It's now it is tangent. Okay, you can see that this sign appears that it says it's tangent. Okay, so let's keep moving on, describing few more. Equal, that's pretty easy. You have two separate lines, two different size lines, and I want to make them equal. I just click equal constraint and make them equal. Okay, so now when you make it equal, you get this saying, okay, I have this 15, this is the 15th constraint in the list, and now you have the equal, this one is equal to this one. So whenever you go and change, let's say I put this geometry, let's say 36, put it 36, both change. Okay, now that's that. And then we'll keep moving. This is the symmetric constraint. I can, let's do this. Can create a circle here, and I can, I'm arbitrarily creating one over here. Okay, two different sizes. Now what I can do is I can put the symmetric constraint, pick those two centers of the circle, and pick the axis, and it will be symmetric to this line. Okay, it could be any line. You can draw something here and put two circles, and then it can make it symmetric. Okay, so that's that for symmetric constraint. Delete it here. So now here is the lock or the block constraint, and then you have the lock constraint here. Both has some advantages if you want to use it. Now, let's say I rather, do having these two dimensions, I'm going to delete them. And now I can put a lock constraint. Okay, let me see what's going on here. Okay, now the block constraint. Okay, so I need to pick this geometry. Now, what is happening is it is fully constrained, even though I did not put any dimensions here, because this line is now constrained. It cannot move around. Okay, put a constraint number here. You can see that it cannot move around. So if I try to move, let me go back here, try to move things, it doesn't allow me to move stuff around. Okay, so that means it is constrained. Okay, so I can go back and delete this guy here, and I can put this lock constraint. See what happens. The lock constraint is more applying to a vertex. Okay, so I can pick this vertex. Now it put these dimensions here, and it make it, rather than I have to put individually these dimensions earlier, constraints earlier, and now it's automatically put it, but it put it with respect to the origin. Now if you have a situation where you need to put them to a certain relative location, this may not work. Okay, so that's why it will always uh, pick the origin to lock this geometry. Okay, so those are the kind of constraints wise, those are the key elements. Now, constraints, as you see, there are so many constraints you have in this. So I can kind of break them down into two groups. Okay, these ones, the distance, these are distance, and this vertical distance, horizontal distance, this distance between two vertices. So these are more for size constraint, so even the diameter. So those are, you control the size of your lines or your geometry by these constraints. Okay. Now, remaining constraints are more of relationship constraints. That means you put a constraint with respect to the another constraint. Okay. Now, of course, these the vertical and horizontal. Maybe you can argue that, hey, that's not a relationship constraint. I that's probably right, but it is kind of a, you are constraining in the space. You're constraining in the space the line to be vertical or horizontal. Okay, so those you can keep them that in mind, that hey, you have if you want to remember or understand them clearly, that's how you can understand them: size constraining and relationship constraining. Okay, now let's look at it a little bit further. Let me do one more thing here. I'm going to put a circle here. Now I'm going to maybe, I'm not going to constrain it, but I'm going to close out. Now you can see these two. Now let's say I want to pad this guy. Now it says, okay, you can't do this because you are, the circle. What the message is clearly saying is, hey, this circle is, outside uh, the sketch. So currently, it is, this sketching is controlled, and it's only allow you to put sub elements within the sketch. You can't put outside, because FreeCAD essentially say do not allow multiple parts to be created or multiple bodies to be created with the one sketch. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. The sketch will only generate or create a one body. It won't create multiple bodies. Okay, so that's the reason why it broke down. So let me see, demonstrate this one here. I can delete this circle. I'm going to put this one inside, and I'm not going to constrain it, but you can. Now if I pad this, it's going to create a solid with basically a solid with a hole in it, because in the FreeCAD it was identified that whatever this hole, which is the sub element of this sketch, is within that sketch. So that's why it is okay for FreeCAD to do that. Okay, since we have learned some sketch about the sketcher, let's go and develop a model. Now what I have done is I have changed the background a little bit, and then all the sketch visualization. I did that going into preferences. In the sketch, you could go to the colors and change whatever you want, and also in the display, you can go to the background and do all that work. I'm not going to show this right now. And we are in this part design workbench, and I'm going to create a, a workspace once again, and create the pick the XY plane to create the sketch. Now we are in this XY plane. I'm going to start with my rectangle once again. By the way, once you draw something, let's say you want to draw something, and you click, and if you want to, you are still in that draw mode, and you can right click to escape that. So in this case, I don't need this, so I'm going to click and delete it with the delete key button. Now I need to put some dimensions, as I done this in the past. 100. I'm going to right click and get out of that. Pick this guy, put 75. right click and get out of this, and let's move this around a little bit. So we are under constraint. We see that 2 degrees of freedom missing, and we know why that is, because this is can still move around. So this time around I'm going to just block this guy, okay, or lock this guy. Right click. So we have a fully constrained rectangle. Okay. Now I want to find the center of this rectangle. There are multiple ways of doing that, but if I go and pick this option in the rectangle creation method, I could have started with that already, but I didn't do that this time because I wanted to demonstrate this is a tutorial, so I will be doing some extra legwork which will help you on how all these different functions of the sketcher is used, so that way that you learn. So first thing is I'm going to put a like a arbitrary point somewhere here. So now this point appear here as blue. Okay, now you can ask why that is. Now, typically when a geometric feature appears as blue, that's like a construction. Okay, so now what is construction is it's something to help you to draw or create features in the sketch, but it is not really a part of the sketch. Okay, now construction could be a line like this. And how do you make this a construction? You go and pick this and make it a construction. Okay, so that way it is a construction line now. So that's what we want to do here. So this point is now it's construction feature. Now I want to make it center it. So the best way to do is to do this symmetric constraint feature. Pick this point, the vertices of the two rectangle, and pick this guy, and that'll put this one at the center because it's symmetric. This feature is symmetric to these 2 points. That's what it does. Okay, you can kind of click or not click on, but hover around this button, and you can read through that what it is. It says create a symmetric constraint between 2 points with respect to a line or a third point. Okay. Now, once we have done that, we're going to put some more construction lines on this. So I'm going to arbitrarily create some lines. So since I have the auto constraining feature, whenever I draw something, if it is closer to being vertical, it'll automatically put a vertical constraint, right? And then I will do another one like this, and it is now horizontal. Right click, get out of here. I want to align this to this point. So how do I do this? You have this line or a constraint point onto an object. So that means I can put a line and put into a point. Okay, I'm going to use this line and pick on this point. It'll move on to this line. Okay, same thing here. So I have something like a 2 axis uh, it, at the center of this rectangle. Okay. Now I want to put a slot here, and I'll start with a couple of circles. Create this slot. Okay. Now right click, get out of here. Now these two I put it arbitrary, but I would like them to be symmetrical along this center line. Okay. Now, okay, before that, I did not make these two construction lines. So I'm going to make them construction line. Okay. And pick this guy and pick this guy. It become a construction. And I click because everything become construction. So I just switch it off. Okay. Now, once again, we can use this symmetric option. So this symmetric constraint feature is very important. Okay, so you can use multiple ways. So I'm going to pick this guy here, pick this guy here, and pick the line. Now that what you see is two arrows pointing to each other. That means this is symmetric. The distance between this point to this line and this point to this point is equal. This line is equal. That's what it means. Okay. Right click it and get out of that. Now I don't want to have these two circles lying around here. I want to be on this line. Okay. What is the best way to do this? You probably guessed it. We can go to this feature, the object or the constraint point onto object, pick this guy and pick this line. So both of them, since we had this constraint or the symmetric feature incorporated into this previously, that's why they moved, both of these circles moved onto this line. Okay, that's the reason why they moves together. Now I have two circles. I want to create a slot between them. I'm going to start drawing some lines and arbitrary. Okay, I don't specifically do not try to make them tangent, at least for now. Now, once again, you will see this object on a line or object on a feature appears here. That means this node point of this line sits on this circle. Okay, that's what it means. Now I want this line to be tangent to these two circles, and same here. Okay, so how do you make it? You click on this constraint tangent function, click on the line first. Either one should work fine. And it is, we got that previous message, which is fine. Go to escape out, pick the line, pick the circle, and then same thing here. Got the same message. Okay, so you can see you have the tangency here, tangency here, tangency here, tangency here. Okay, everything is tangent. Okay, now I'm going to do some trick here to remove these, these partial, uh, partial of the circle or the portion of the circle, because I don't want that. So to do that, you can use this trim edge command. Okay, so what we will do is we will activate that. It removed portion of it. I want to get the other one. Got that rid of that. Now, FreeCAD is smart enough to figure it out where to, from where to which point that needs to be removed. So it already did that. I right click it and get out of that. Now I have this slot. Now it shows that still I'm, 7 degrees of freedom short. Okay. So there should be bunch of lines. So I click on this, it shows, okay, you are short on bunch of these lines. Now you can click on them and figure it out where this problem is. But that is a kind of a handy way to kind of learn how to figure it out, what other constraints I have to use. Okay, I have to put in. So let's get out of that. Now, I know one thing that we know is these size are not controlled, right? The size is not controlled, the position probably not controlled. So you need to put some constraint, additional constraint. So let's put the diameter 1. I want to make it 30. Okay, let's pick this guy, put the diameter to, let's say, 15. So you got the dimensional constraint put on to those two circles. Move this guy so you can see it clearly. Now still 5 degrees of freedom missing. So what that could be. So okay, still this is not fully constrained. and it also show these construction lines. These two are not fully constrained either. So let's do this. I think the part of the problem is, you see, if we move around, you can still, this center of this partial circle is moved. So that means there should be a dimension between these 2 points. Okay. I will create let's start by picking this on. Okay. Okay, because this, I already have this activated. That's the reason. Let's not do that. Okay. Okay, now it works. Okay, I have, let's say I make it 25. Got that, right click it, get out of that. So, okay, so you got some, most of it constrained, but you can see it 4 degrees of freedom still under constraint, and it clearly point out to these 2 lines. Okay, so why now I typically don't like when FreeCAD showed the construction lines to be under constraint, but in this case we have no option, so we have to constrain them. So the thing that is, you can move it around, you can move this around, you can move the whole thing. So that's two under constraints, and this guy move, that's one more, and the whole thing can move. So there are like 4 total uh, under constraint situation here. So what we need to do once again is put some constraint on this. Okay. Okay. And then I'm going to just block them. Okay, so we got the fully constrained geometry here. Um, and now I can close the sketch. I have it here. Now what we can do is we can pad it to create the block or a bracket. Okay, make it 15 mils. So you got the complete bracket completed. Now I want to demonstrate something quickly here. So I'm going to pick this face and try to create a geometry on that face. Okay. Now it is the sketch is going to be on this face, but I can't see if I try to click on these edges, I can't pick any of them. Okay. So what you can do is here is a option in FreeCAD where you can create some geometric linking elements between solid bodies and the sketch. So if I click on this and edges, I can create some uh, edges on this sketch. It's designed on the sketch, and they are going to be helpful for me to kind of start creating some geometry on this face. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is put an arbitrary node here or a point here, which is a construction point, and I'm going to create trying to make this guy center here. Okay, okay, now I got at least that point to lie on the center of this line. And then I want to find the center here in between these two. I can do the same, can put an arbitrary point here. Right click is get out of here, use the symmetry option. Okay, so you have two construction points line, or actually line one here, line one here. This is the reason why I want to find that one. So use as much as you can these construction features in order to construct your sketch. Okay. Now I'm going to start with a rectangle again. Now this time around, I'm going to use this because that seems to be easier. Okay. Now it comes with some precondition constraints already. So it is already attached to this center, so it cannot move around. It can only, expand or contract. Now I'm going to put some dimensions around it. Let's make it 20. Let's say make it 20 mils and 5 mils. It's fine. I'm going to keep it. So this feature at least is fully constrained. I want to create something similar here. Okay, at the same, basically symmetrically to this, whatever the center line here. Okay. Now, in order to do that, what I can do is, okay, first I need to put like a vertical axis at this center point. Okay. I will draw a line, construction line once again. It's not a construction line, so I'm going to make it construction, or pick the line, pick this construction mode. Yeah, in the construction mode, get out of that construction mode now. And as you guess it right, we are going to make this guy lie here. Okay. Now that construction mode is right in the center of this face. Now I can demonstrate or show you some cool trick here. I can, and then before doing that, I need to pick this guy. So let me do it slowly. Okay. What I will do is I will pick the entire geometry, drag it around it. It'll pick all the geometry elements. Okay. And pick this line or the construction geometry. Go here, what it says is create a symmetric geometry with respect to the last selected line or point. The last selected line was this guy, the construction line. So when you click on it, it put a symmetrically the same a clone of this geometry here. Okay. Now the only thing is it is not fully constrained. Okay, so that's the bad part about it. So what we can do here is uh, we can, we can use the equal because I want it to be equal all the time. So we will say equal so that it make it equal, and put this guy and made it equal. So now if I, okay, having trouble moving this guy. Okay, it doesn't move. That's fine. Um, so what it does is if I change this jar number, let's say if I change this 5 mil to 5.5, it'll both of them will change. Okay. Now, but what happens is it still shows that this is not constrained. Okay, this feature is not constrained because you can move this guy around. Okay. Now, to do that, I'm going to once again use my trick where symmetric constraints trick. Okay, so this time it worked. So that means now this is already, you can't move it, right? It's already constrained. Both of them are constrained. Now, once again, they have this problem of pick on it and it shows this line is have a 2 degrees of freedom missing, and we know why it can move around and its size also is not constrained. So I have to put something here. uh, let's say I can keep it as it is, and I'm going to block it. Okay. Okay, now everything is fully constrained. You can see it. I'm going to get out of that. Now, since this sketch is within this body, it's part of it, I can pad this guy and I can leave 10 mils. I can make it 12 mils. Doesn't matter. You got the body, one complete body or the bracket completed. Okay, so that's the tutorial. So we covered a lot of features and how to build models using the FreeCAD Sketcher. So leave comments on how you would approach building this bracket and what constraints you would apply. Also ask questions. If you have suggestions to improve this sketch tutorial, leave in the comment section.